I think one of the strangest things about getting older is realizing how many parts of yourself you've quietly left behind. Not intentionally, or not because you sat down one day and decided they weren't important anymore, just gradually. Like one day you're there, then life happens, years go by, and somehow they're gone. A few weeks ago, I found one of mine. It was sitting in a karaoke room, waiting for me to pick up a microphone. A couple of friends had invited me to karaoke when I was traveling, and my reaction surprised me. Not because I didn't want to go, because the truth is, I've always loved singing. If anything, that's what made the situation so strange. I wanted to sing. I just didn't want people to hear me. And sitting there that night, microphone in hand, I realized I was still carrying around an insecurity that had followed me for more than 10 years. It was an insecurity that quietly convinced myself to stop doing something I genuinely enjoyed. When I was a kid, singing was one of those things I never thought twice about. I sang in the car, I sang at home. If a song I liked came on, I sang along to it. Not because I was particularly talented, and definitely not because I thought I was going to become a singer someday. I just enjoyed it. Looking back, I think that's one of the best things about being a kid. You don't spend all your time evaluating yourself. You don't turn every hobby into a performance review. You don't sit there wondering whether you're good enough to deserve enjoying something. If it's fun, you do it. And for me, singing was fun. The story probably starts at one of those family karaoke gatherings. You know the kind where people are eating, talking, laughing, and eventually somebody gets handed a microphone. At the time, I was around the age where puberty had started doing what puberty does. My voice was changing. I was becoming more self-conscious, and for the first time in my life, I was starting to care about how other people viewed me. I remember getting up to sing. I don't remember the song, and I don't remember whether I sounded good or bad, but I do remember the comments from some family members afterward. There were a couple of jokes and a couple of remarks made about my voice. I don't think these people probably remember those comments that they made before the night was even over. But for some reason, I didn't. Those comments landed exactly at the wrong time. And once they did, they stuck. Looking back, I never consciously decided to stop singing. That's what's so strange about it. There wasn't some dramatic moment where I declared I was done forever. It happened slowly enough that I barely noticed. I became a little more self-conscious, a little less willing to sing around other people, a little more aware of how I sounded. Then one day turned into a month turned into a year, and eventually singing became one of those things that I simply didn't do anymore. If you had asked me why, I probably wouldn't have had a real answer. I would have just shrugged and said, I don't know, I just don't really sing. But that's not entirely true. The truth is that embarrassment made the decision for me. And I think that's something that I hope most people relate to. Because maybe it's not singing for others. Maybe it's drawing or dancing or making videos. Whether it's wearing certain clothes, pursuing a certain career choice, talking to someone you like, or trying something you've always been curious about. I think most people have a version of this story. A moment where somebody was not very kind and laughed, and there was a comment or a sign that hit a little harder than it should have. It was an experience that made them feel self-conscious. And instead of risking that feeling again, they slowly started avoiding the thing that caused it. And it's not because they stopped loving it, because avoiding embarrassment just felt safer. The scary part is that after enough time passes, you stop seeing it as avoidance. You start seeing it as your personality. You tell yourself you've moved on and that you've outgrown it and it was never really for you, when in reality, you might just be protecting yourself from a feeling you experienced years ago. Which brings me back to that karaoke room. When my friend suggested it, I said yes. But internally, I was already negotiating with myself. I told myself maybe I'd sing quietly or pretend to sing. Maybe I'd only join in on the chorus. Maybe I'd let everyone else take the lead. And for the first few songs, that's exactly what happened. I mumbled, sang under my breath. Sometimes I didn't sing at all. I was technically participating, but only barely. It's kind of funny because I wanted to sing, I genuinely did, but I was trying to participate without actually being seen. What started changing things wasn't some huge burst of confidence, it was noticing everyone else. My friends were forgetting lyrics, missing notes, laughing at themselves. Nobody cared. Nobody was trying to impress anyone or treating karaoke like a talent competition. Meanwhile, I was sitting there acting like I was about to be judged by a panel of experts. And eventually, somewhere during the night, I stopped overthinking it. I don't remember what song it was. I don't remember what flipped the switch. I just remember finally singing. Not quietly or half-heartedly, but actually singing. And the weird part was nothing happened. There was no laughs, no comments, no one cared. We just kept singing. And for the first time in a very long time, I remembered why I loved it in the first place. Because it was fun. That's it. That was the realization. What surprised me wasn't that I enjoyed singing. I already knew that deep down because I loved it as a kid. What surprised me was realizing how much influence a small moment from childhood or adolescence had continued to have over my life. The people who made those comments probably forgot about them years ago. Meanwhile, I was still carrying them around like baggage. They had moved on and I hadn't. And I think that's true for more people than we realize. A lot of us are letting old embarrassments and mistakes make present-day decisions. It's not because we're weak or incapable, but because embarrassment and a fear of being judged has a way of lingering long after the moment itself is gone. The older I get, the more I think adulthood isn't just about becoming someone new. A lot of it is about reconnecting with parts of yourself that got buried along the way. The hobbies, interests, and passions. The versions of yourself that existed before you became so worried about being judged. Because somewhere along the way, many of us started treating enjoyment like something that had to be earned, like we needed to be talented enough or successful or confident before we are allowed to participate. But maybe that's backwards. Maybe enjoyment does come first. Maybe it's okay to be bad or foolish at something because the bigger loss is letting embarrassment and being judged decide what gets to stay in your life. Maybe it's still sitting there waiting for you, the same way singing was waiting for me. And maybe finding your way back doesn't start with confidence. Maybe it starts with being willing to try and feel a little embarrassed again. Thanks for watching, Rardo. Thanks for listening to my story, and I hope to see you in the next one.